6. Genesis chapter 6 is where we're at. So remember last week I gave you the cute little hourglass idea. Remember that? Cute little hourglass idea. Also last week I showed you the little melting ice cubes, right? Okay, because the problem with evolutionary thinking is they look at ice cubes today and they say, well, the ice cubes are melting very, very slowly. Therefore, ice cubes for the past 4.5 billion years must have melted very, very slowly. Does that make sense? Like that's what they conclude, okay? They look at the hourglass of today and say the hourglass is dropping little grains of sand very, very slowly. And therefore, for the past 4.5 billion years, it must have always happened in a very slow fashion. If you were in school and they were to talk about some of these biological concepts or geological concepts is a better discipline, you'll be told about continental drift theory. Yes? Raise your hand if you learned continental drift. Well, the problem with continental drift is it is looking at what is happening today and not understanding that what we see today could have never become what we see today if you didn't have continental sprints. Okay, so right now we see what I think is as like continental exhaustion, but as we're going to read in our Bibles this morning, it started off not with continental drift, but continental sprint. And so with that, let's begin to see how this starts to play out in Genesis chapter 6. All right, so bear with me. We're going to do a lot of reading of Bible today. Genesis 6, beginning verse 1. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. If this was a different study with a different focus, I would go all into this. We're not going to do that today. If you have a question in particular that you want me to dive into about this, then come Friday night, and Friday night at 7 o'clock at my house, we will be taking all of your additional questions that I don't have time to cover, okay? But the important part of this for the story that we're going to focus on today is the fact that verse 3, then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, okay? And you start to see how the world becomes corrupt. Look at verse 5. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Listen to verse 5 one more time. Okay? All right, Kim, give him an elbow. Wake him up. All right, thanks. All right. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Was only evil continually. Have you ever heard when somebody says, it's never been worse? The state of politics has never been worse. The state of humanity has never been worse. That's a lie. Okay, that's a lie. The state of politics, do you know that we had a civil war in this nation? Okay, so however bad you think politics are today, we are not in the midst of a real civil war, so you take that one to the bank. The second thing is, this tells us that at this time, the thought of every man, every woman, every kid was only on evil all the time, minus, as we'll see, this guy Noah, okay? So is that pretty bad? That's pretty bad. Understand this, they were not helping grandma cross the street, get me? They weren't selling, Girl Scout cookies and whatever, okay? So this is really bad time. Verse 6, and the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. Okay, is the world in trouble? The world's in trouble, okay? And I don't know if you've ever had this. I've only had this maybe once or twice in my life, where I've had an authority figure say this kind of thing to me, like, I'm sorry that I know you. It's like, oh, you're in trouble, or I am sorry that I trusted you. Have you ever heard that? Like, okay. And so that's God, like, I'm sorry that I made you. This is not good. Then you get verse 8, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And that is a whole different theme that we'll try to stuff in to today's lesson, see how that goes. Verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Yes? Does that ring a bell to you guys now? Right? These are, okay, so this is like, now we got the shift that we're focusing solely on this guy, Noah, as we turn the page in the book of Genesis. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. You see the contrast from how everybody else is? Everybody else is evil continually, and then you got this guy, Noah, who loves God. He walks with God. He's a righteous man. Verse 10, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. Back to chapter 1 and chapter 2, was that how God wanted it to be? No, when God made it, when he finished creation, it was all good. Everybody was nice to each other, all of these things, and it had continued that way for some time until you get up to this point where everything's corrupted. Verse 13, and God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh. As Bible students, I want you to be mindful of that word all. That word all and other words like it is super important to this part of the story. Okay, he's going to make an end to part of the flesh, some of the flesh. No, he's going to make end to all of the flesh. For the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its breadth, 50 cubits, and its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh. You see that word again? In which the breath of life under heaven. Everything, right? Everything sounds like all. Everything that is on the earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wives, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort in the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and the animals according to their kinds, and of every sort shall come into you to keep, every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Okay, so we get a couple things that are very important. First of all, God tells Noah, I'm going to wipe everything out. Yes? God tells Noah, I'm going to wipe everything out. And he tells Noah, I need you to build like what do they call when they rob banks, an escape car or something? Okay, so I need you to build like your way out of this destruction. So I'm going to destroy everything, but I need you to build something that's going to preserve you and your family when I wipe everything out. Got it? Okay, and he gives them the instructions to build what we call the ark, and this ark is gigantic. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit to give you guys a little bit of a idea of how this goes. Share screen. Turn, there you go. Okay. Could be bigger, but it's bigger now. All right. Okay. So In essence, a cubit is 18 inches. And so what this does is it translates the size of the ark from what you, cubits to feet. Okay, so do you see 51 feet high, 80 feet wide, 510 feet long? Yes. Football field is 300 feet long. Got it? Okay, so is this thing big? It's huge. It's huge. And inside of it, it's got the lower, second, and third decks. Thankfully, my family and I got to go back to Kentucky where they've reconstructed a life-size ark, and it is just that huge. So you see this little thing right here. This is like in comparison to a football field, right? This gives you an indication of what it looks like on the inside with its various levels. This thing is gigantic. And so God instructs Noah to build this gigantic escape car, okay? Because he's about to destroy all things on the planet. One of the things that I'm going to just make note of now, and then we'll talk about it a little bit later. If you see verse 19, look at verse 19. And of every sort of living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort, is what the ESV says, 2 of every sort. I want you to compare that to verse 20, where it says of the birds according to their kinds, and the animals according to their kinds, and the things on the ground according to its kind. If you go back to chapter 1, when we get the animals being created, you'll see that same word kinds. And that's super important when you understand that, because a kind is like what a lot of biologists would call a family. So like you have species of things, and then above that you have families of things. Probably the easiest comparison between how our modern day evolutionists talk about species versus what the Bible's saying would be the family of species versus the kind. So a wolf and a chihuahua are the same kind. Okay? A wolf and a chihuahua are the same kind. All right? And we don't think of them as the same kind today, right? But they, from a wolf, you can get a chihuahua. Crazy. But the wolf has enough genetic variables within their genetic code that from a wolf you can ultimately, overbreeding over time, you can end up with something that I don't know why anybody wants, but you can have a chihuahua. Okay. I'm just saying, okay. All right. So Noah is not told to put every single animal, right, the poodle and the chihuahua and the Labrador, all on the ark. He's told to put 2 of every kind. Okay, 2 of every kind. So I'm gonna do this real quick. How do I? Oh, that's not good. Stop share. Share photos. I'm learning on the fly. All right. Turn. Are you gonna turn? It's not turning. The other one turned so nicely. Oh, thanks. Good job. Smart kids. Okay. All right. You guys see this? And first of all, do you notice the pictures of the ark? Okay. This is what the ark looked like. So have you ever seen those little fairy tale books? And it shows like this little bitty scrunched up ark and all the animals sticking their heads out and all that. Okay, so the ark was gigantic. It was like this. It was built for one job and one job only, and that was to float, to not sink. All right, now you get these fancy numbers on the side, which shows you like the square footage of the ark when you take its height, its width, its length, the 3 decks and all of that. And then you guys see like the birds. If you had all the kinds of birds, they take up 2.6% of the ark. All the mammals take up 28.7 because, like, did you have to put the water animals on the boat? You don't put the water. Okay, very good. Got it. Smart. All right. And all the reptiles, okay, the creeping things. You put all the kinds of animals on the ark. Are they squeezed together and all this stuff? No, they're social distancing on the ark, bro. I'm for real. Like they have the stickers on the ground that say remain 6 feet apart because you put all those animals and you only get to 46.8%. You're not even at 50% occupancy on the ark. So when an atheist tells you that the ark story is made up, could never have happened because the ark would not have been big enough, number one, ask them how big the ark was. And number two, ask them how many animals were needed to be put on the ark. And guess what? They're not going to know the answer to either one. Okay, because they've just been told a lie and they bought the lie. But the ark was ginormous and it had more than enough room to carry all the kinds of animals that would have needed to be on it. Yes? Got me? All right, so now, chapter 7. All right, so let's bust some myths with chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Be Noah, okay? Now, later on in the story, you don't want to be Noah, but right now, you want to be Noah, okay? Like when you look at yourself, like, who do I want to be in the Bible? You want to be Noah, okay? Righteous. Verse 2. Take you 7 pairs of all the clean animals, the male and his maid, and the pairs of the animals that are not clean, the male and his maid, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens, also male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I send rain. I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made, I will blot out from the face of the ground. Okay, so now we are not like 100 years before this happens. Now we're the week before. Okay, now we're the week before God's going to send. And so now we got to put these animals actually on the ark and get going. Okay, verse 6. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and animals that are not clean, and of birds and everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, and as God had commanded Noah. After 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. Verse 11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, so literally like 100 years later from when he first was told, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. If you don't have this underlined, you need to have this underlined. If you don't already know this, you need to know this. If you were to ask just 100 random people and say, what happened during the flood of Noah in that story, they would say, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Like, how do you know? Because I have a little song and it goes like this. Okay, people know about the 40 days and 40 nights of rain, but do you understand what this just said? Okay, this says the great deep burst forth. The great deep burst forth. Okay, this is the very same word in here that you find in Numbers when this guy Korah leads this rebellion and God's really ticked off at them and he has the earth open up and swallow them. Got it? Yeah. So what, when you go into the earth's core, is it cold? It's hot. Okay, it's hot. So like when a volcano erupts and that lava comes out, it's hot. So God is, watch me now, God is opening up the earth. He's literally splitting the earth apart. Remember, if we go back to the creation scene, he does 2 things with water. First, he separates the water above from the water below. We'll talk about that in just a second. Yeah, you guys remember that? Separates the water above from the water below. He literally creates a pool of water over the surface of the sky, if you will. Like if we lived pre-flood, you looked up, you wouldn't look up at a sky like we look up at. You would have looked up at like a gigantic pool of water above the earth, which is creepy to us potentially, but not for them. Okay, but that was above. Okay, and then the earth on the ground, he separates the water that's below from the land, so you have all the water together. And if you have all the water together, what is true about the land? You have all the land together. Yes? Okay, with that, we go back to our next little fancy picture. I'm gonna get good at this, Norman, I promise. Stop share, start share photos. Boom. Done. Look, I'm getting fast. Look at that. See, I'm telling you, if you take the speed of that versus the first one, record improvement. Okay, we get this? Yeah? All right, kids, especially you guys that are falling asleep. Hey, does this little picture here with all the continents together. Does that look familiar, like from school?
No.
Oh, it doesn't, not Roger, but everybody else, yes? Okay, so you guys see this? Okay, you learned this in school, yes? Oh my, guess what? Christian, believer in creation actually agrees with the science you were taught in school. Yeah, because guess what? This is probably what the earth looked like. All the water together and all the land together until God, in the 600 year of Noah's life, ripped the earth apart and split those continents into what we see today. And that's why I said, you're taught in school continental drift. This would have been continental sprint. Because when God, on this day, burst the insides of the earth open, those continents, bam. So if you think of some events, even in recent history, remember the recent, wrong word, in Japan, the thing and the water, tsunami, there we go, boom. See, I know you guys are supposed to be quiet and I'm supposed to do all the talking, but I appreciate that a little bit. We'll help, thanks. The tsunami, okay, when, you guys remember that? Japan, like wipe out, like a lot of people dead all in one day. Okay, do you know that was two continents, like just touching, just like I say, like a little bit of continental shifting, just a little bit, and you have all that. Think of where these continents are now. Okay, and it didn't happen over billions of years. I'm sorry, atheist friend. This happened immediately. And for some of you, watch, I'm going to give you just an easy concept to help you understand that. Okay, have you ever been trying to loosen something up that was really hard to loosen? What's the easier method? And you guys that are smarter than me about this, don't just be quiet for a second. Let me just teach on this, because if I'm wrong, I'm going to still go with what I'm going to say. All right. Okay. When something's really hard to loosen, is it easier to loosen it gradually or to get a little bam and get that seal broke hard all at once? It's the hard at once. Yeah, just go with me, even if I'm wrong. I know I'm not. Right? Like you can try to do it gradually, or you can get a little something and give it a good kick once and then pop, and then it comes easy, right? Well, you tell me, if you were going to move these apart, these land masses, gigantic land masses, move them apart, what's going to be easier, to gradually push them apart or to just rip them wide open from the beginning? We know this. We know this. You do not get continental drift over billions of years. You get continental drift as the remnant of what we see today from continental sprint when God ripped the earth's core open. Okay? And if you can only imagine what we see from a tsunami, can you imagine what this would have created? Can you imagine what this would have created? Because guess what? A Christian who's informed, do you deny that there was an ice age? You don't deny there was an ice age, because the conditions that this would have created, the immense heat coming from the core of the earth that would have heated up the oceans, that would have led to incredible amounts of evaporation, the dirt and dust from all of the earth's movement all at once would have filled the sky, would have created a cloud like none other between us in our atmosphere and the sun. You block out the sun for a gigantic period of time, like, I don't know, hundreds of years, you're going to have really cold temperatures on Earth, and it gives you an ice age. But once that stuff gets out of the air and you return to some semblance of normal, then your Earth's going to be like what it is right now, and it's probably been heating up really slowly ever since. Okay, so guess what? The Pangea stuff that you learn in school, I'm with it. An ice age, I'm with it. But it wasn't millions or billions of years ago. And the flood story explains it all. So let's continue on. One other thing I want to say, it's the last part of verse 11. So you get the great deep burst forth, and then it says the windows of the heavens were opened. And then you get verse 12, and rain fell upon the earth. See, I think that great canopy that God separated the waters above from the waters below, he let that bad boy go, and boom. Okay, all right. Verse 12, and 40 days and 40 nights, And on the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives and of his sons with him entered the ark, they and every beast according to its kinds, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and creeping things that creep on the earth according to its kinds, and every bird according to its kinds, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded them, and the Lord shut them in. The Lord continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. It had one job. It didn't have a job of looking good or being fast. No, it had one job, and it was to float. And that bad boy floated. Verse 19 will drop here. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. Okay, one of the atheist arguments is that this was a local flood, right? Like a regional flood. There's nothing in this passage that makes you think it was local. Verse 21, and all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind, and everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things, and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark, and the waters prevailed on the earth for 150 days. How do you get animals that are in the water on the top of mountains? Does this give you an explanation? It gives you the explanation. It's not millions and billions of years. It's the waters covered the highest mountain peaks. So everything in the water could end up there. And then, as we'll see, when the waters start to recede, some of those animals that got jammed up in there, the waters recede, but their remains remain. And that's how you can have Sharptooth Mountain in Kern County. Chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The waters of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. And the rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. And at the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 7th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, and the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. And the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the earth, from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So she put out his hand and he took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. In the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife, your sons and your wives. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him, every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, and everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. This whole scene takes about a year, right? Not just 40 days, which is roughly a little bit more than a month, right? This whole thing takes a year. It takes a year for God to fulfill what he told Noah he was going to do. Most people don't know that. Most people don't know these details, but these details make all of the difference. And as I said, they set the stage for what would have been what we think back and look at as an ice age. The other thing is this, and I don't mean to like upset you about this, but the world we see today, and is there not beauty in the world we see today? You have to understand that we are living in the, sorry guys, but you know the what some people, what their bedrooms look like when they're just trashed and there's stuff everywhere and all this. Nathan, don't look at me like that. Jonathan, don't look at me like that. Okay. You know when it looks like the just mass destruction and you're like, no, really, there is a kid that lives in here somewhere. Can't find them, but they're in there. That's what we're living in. We're living in the world left over from God, just mass destruction. Can you imagine what this earth looked like before the flood in all of its perfectness? So I've got one last little thing that I want to close out with, and we're done with our lesson. See if I can continue the speed at which I'm developing this. Okay, so on Wednesday night, one of the things we covered was the Tower of Babel, right? Or Babel, probably a better way to say it. And remember, the Tower of Babel happens after the flood. Okay, so you have Noah and you have his family, and they're supposed to multiply and fill the earth and all this. And then you get, basically what happens is they choose not to do that. They don't want to fill the whole earth. They just want to build a tower and like create this wonderful big city, and they're all going to live there. Yeah. Okay. And God does what? God disrupts this, and he does it because he confuses their languages. And because he confuses their languages, they all link up based on a similar language, and then they spread out all over the earth. There's some, like, I don't know, 300 flood stories in various cultures on the planet. There's some 300 or so, maybe it's a little bit less, but around, think, 300 flood stories. And so many of them, though they use different names and don't always have all the details right, they have this very similar theme, that there's a guy who builds a boat and him and his family are saved and all this stuff. Yeah. So I give you this. What you see here up top is the Chinese symbol for boats. You guys get that? Up top is the Chinese symbol for boat. Nicholas, you're getting this? Totally. Nicholas is enthralled beyond belief right there. Okay. The word boat in Chinese writing is a combination of three symbols. Those symbols are the word vessel, the word eight, and the word people. Take that one and do what you want with it. The Chinese word for boat is a collection of three other words: the word vessel, the word eight, and the word people. Oh, don't worry about it. It's just a mere coincidence. It's just a mere coincidence, isn't it? Not at all. Because when God shook the people up at the Tower of Babel and they all went their different ways, guess what common story they all had? The story I just read to you. They all had the common story of Noah's flood. And so over time, the names change and some of the details change, but the remnants of that truth still exist, even if you're Chinese, born in China, learning their language. Your word for boat is the combination of the word vessel, the word eight, and the word people. That's your lesson.